Darkwing Duck cartoon explored in detail. Hi, I'm Mystical Blue. Well, if you would like to take a look at the time period of 1990, you would agree with us when we tell you that the year was indeed a golden period for Disney television. Not that Disney has not always been associated with world-class animation, but if we put stress on that particular time period, Walt Disney Studios did experience a renaissance of animation both in theatres as well as on television. To begin with, we had the Disney Afternoon, or in other words, the syndicated programming block featuring 2 hours of quality Disney cartoons that almost defined afternoons for an entire generation. It featured entertaining animated shows such as DuckTales, Tailspin, Chip 'n Dale, Rescue Rangers, and then of course, the main content of today's video, Darkwing Duck.
I am Darkwing Duck!
Never has there been a more debonair, daring hero as far as Darkwing Duck is concerned. Yes, we are talking about Tad Stone's 91 episodes animated superhero comedy TV series, Disney's Darkwing Duck, which first aired on the Disney Channel back in the year 1991. The show ran straight for 65 episodes, making it more than enough to run in syndication. But then again, the series became so popular that ABC, the American Broadcasting Company, ordered 13 more episodes to be generated, thereby giving the series a second season. Darkwing Duck went on to become even more popular with 13 more episodes produced and putting the TV series at a total of 3 seasons with 91 exciting episodes. If you ask us, 91 is a rather extraordinary number for an animated series, but given its popularity, it was utterly worth it.
I am the terror that flaps in the night.
So, where did the idea of a talking duckman come from? While the series has visibly taken some renowned characters from DuckTales, is Darkwing Duck a spin-off of DuckTales? We suggest that you stay tuned till the end of the video to find out, and a lot more. You ready? Let's get dangerous then. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
Darkwing Duck to Ratcatcher. Code words? Let's get dangerous.
What was the cartoon television series all about? Would you believe us if we told you that Darkwing Duck was initially created as a last-minute substitute for a planned reboot of the 1959 animated TV series titled The Adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle and Friends, when it dawned upon the board that they did not really have the rights to the characters, but only the rights to their home video? Fair to address this series here as a spin-off of the 1987 cartoon series titled DuckTales, as it did step into production a year later after the series ended. While there is no denying that Darkwing Duck was primarily inspired by particular episodes, Double O Duck from the first season and The Masked Mallard from the third season of DuckTales, the character of Darkwing Duck itself was inspired from the pulp heroes back from the 1940s. In fact, creator Tad Stones pulled some major inspiration from a list of characters such as Doc Savage, The Shadow, Batman, Sandman, the Green Hornet, Flash, the Lone Ranger, and Zorro for the character of Darkwing Duck. He was joined by Mike Pereza and another artist, and the latter duo started developing the visuals to go ahead with Stone's ideas. This animated series here happens to be the first Disney afternoon cartoon that put focus on the concept of action and not on the conventional adventures, and the character of Darkwing is seen daily engaging in slapstick battles both with supervillains as well as street thugs. Darkwing Duck also happens to be the very first Disney afternoon show that was produced entirely as a genre parody. Previously, shows would only contain parts of parody in certain episodes, but here, almost each episode was filled with allusions to superhero, pulp adventure, and super spy fictions. In fact, this animated show here actually had the liberty to do whatever any episode called for, and may we add, on a per episode basis. So basically, the writers were free to take any direction they wanted, whilst disregarding things like previously established character origins, including that of Darkwing Ducks, if required. Coming back to the character of Darkwing Duck, he himself happens to boast a satirical persona, especially with his gas gun, the ostentatious introductions, and let's not forget his famous costume. In fact, even the fictional city that he resides in, St. Canard, happens to be an unswerving spoof of Batman's Gotham City with Darkwing Duck bragging about quite a colourful rogues gallery. Are you ready to dive into the multiverse of crackness? Well, let's get on to it then, with the storyline exploring the first few episodes in detail. Darkly Dawns the Duck, Part 1. The city of St. Canard, like any other major metropolis, has its problems with the criminal elements, but the city has the caped crime fighter by night, Darkwing Duck, daily depositing orders of dastardly delinquents on the doorsteps of the city police station. By the looks of him, he is visibly dying for his moment of fame and the media hype that comes along with it, and it goes without saying that he does have an arsenal of wonderful toys at his disposal. Next, we are introduced to the infamous supervillain Taurus Bulba, who is seen ordering his henchmen, which includes Hoof, Mouth, and Bulba's right-hand man, Hammerhead Hannigan, about laying their hands on some kind of super weapon. But with his secretary Clovis informing him that Warden Waddlesworth is coming, he asks them all to leave, including his pet vulture, Tantalus. His den is soon transformed into what looks like a cell in a prison, and we finally learn that he is in jail, and the warden simply has no idea about his shenanigans. Coming back to Darkwing, he is on his daily night watch when Tantalus passes right by him, holding onto some kind of a trunk. Intrigued by such a sight, Darkwing hops onto his motorcycle and starts following the bird. Tantalus is eventually seen dropping the trunk on top of Hammerhead, who along with Hoof and Mouth is on top of a moving train, carrying the super weapon. Hammerhead opens the trunk, discovers a jet inside, and proceeds with the plan as per the orders of Bulba. It's also around the same time that Darkwing manages to board the moving train, and upon seeing Hoof and Mouth there, he recognises the duo as the henchmen of Taurus Bulba. Thrilled that he's finally getting to deal with A-level criminals, he goes to face the duo saying, "I am the terror that flaps in the night. I am the switch that derails your train. I am Darkwing Duck." While he is able to incapacitate Hoof and Mouth, Hammerhead intervenes, and making use of the jet, he has the train compartment carrying the weapon up into the sky. Darkwing attempts to get hold onto the train wagon with a grappling hook, but Tantalus cuts it off, leading to Darkwing falling from above and eventually crashing into the property of ace pilot Launchpad McQuack, who ultimately becomes his sidekick. Addressing himself as Darkwing's biggest fan, Launchpad decides to aid him in thwarting the evildoers. They are literally on top of the train wagon when Tantalus picks up Darkwing only to release him from above. Launchpad manages to save him, but loses track of the train wagon. This angers Darkwing, and he walks away from there while stating to Launchpad that he prefers to walk alone. Back in person, Taurus Bulba is even more irritated at his henchmen, especially at Hammerhead, because the super weapon is useless without an arming code. Bulba gives further instructions to his henchmen to go and kidnap the warden's daughter, Goslin, from the St. Canard orphanage in order to learn the code. We learn that Goslin was practically raised in the warden's lab, so if there's anyone who knows the code, it is her. Bulba's henchmen are almost successful in kidnapping Goslin from the orphanage when Darkwing appears and saves her, escaping from there on his motorcycle. They are followed by Bulba's henchmen, as well as the police, with the latter believing Darkwing to be the real perpetrator. In the meantime, Launchpad, who is hell-bent on becoming the sidekick of Darkwing, reaches up to him in order to aid him. But Darkwing has his own plans, and he is seen jumping right into the harbour with the sole purpose of putting a stop to the whole chase. Also, in doing so, he is able to take Gosling inside his secret hideout, one that happens to be the very watchtower on top of the Audubon Bay Bridge. Gosling eventually blackmails her way into staying with Darkwing at the tower. Coming back to the devious Taurus Bulba, he decides that it's finally time for him to pay a visit to Darkwing Duck, whom he addresses as the costumed clown. He tells Clovis that if the secret weapon is secured, then it's time for him to say goodbye to the warden. With Clovis pressing a button, the whole prison cell is altered into the shape of a flying ship, one that has the head of a bull. With the ship rising up into the sky, Bulba is seen regretting the loss of a perfect hideout as the prison. The pilot episode ends with Bulba asking Clovis to take the ship downtown, as it is time that he finally met the Darkwing Duck.
Hero away!
Darkly Dawns the Duck, Part 2. I am the thing that goes bump in the night. I am the neurosis that requires a $500 an hour shrink. Yes, that's Darkwing Duck stating to Gosling about how dangerous he really is. The duo have literally been inconspicuous the whole time, keeping to themselves in Darkwing's hideout. While Darkwing has been trying to think of their next course of action, Gosalyn has been busy messing with most of Darkwing's fancy weapons. With Darkwing eventually attempting to put Gosalyn to sleep, the latter asks him what it is that Taurus Bulba wants with her. Darkwing tells her that Bulba stole her grandfather's invention and he thinks that she knows the code to operate the machine. Gosalyn tells Darkwing that her grandfather never told her about any code, especially one that armed the secret weapon, Ramrod. With Gosalyn further unable to sleep, she asks Darkwing to sing the lullaby that her grandfather sang to her. With her teaching the lyrics of Little Blue Girl to Darkwing, the latter eventually discovers that the song actually has the controls of the Ramrod. On the other hand, the criminal genius Bulba has devised a plan to tempt Darkwing out of his den. Resorting to Morse code, he sends Darkwing a message stating to him that he is ready to surrender himself to Darkwing. No wonder Darkwing falls for it, despite Gosalyn telling him that the whole thing just does not make any sense, especially given that Bulba is a criminal mastermind and he has nothing to gain by surrendering himself to Darkwing. Thinking that Bulba is outmatched, the masked vigilante leaves his hideout only to have his secret location disclosed by Tantalus. Bulba immediately orders his henchmen to go into his hideout and get Gosalyn while he will personally deal with Darkwing. With Bulba meeting Darkwing, he eventually reveals his true colours and has him taken into custody while himself getting out of there. Back inside Darkwing's hideout, Bulba's henchmen come after Gosalyn, and while the latter is able to defeat the henchmen using the breakfast supplies, she gets captured by Tantalus in the end. On the other hand, Darkwing is seen inside a lockup, repenting for his stupid actions and stating that he does not even have a friend to help him out in a situation like this, when Launchpad shows up there and helps him escape. Launchpad next takes his hero on a ride on Thundercrack, the jet plane that he built himself. Of course, Darkwing loves it because the jet literally looks like him. Upon getting close to Bulba's airship, Launchpad has Darkwing sneaked inside the flying ship, but alas, he gets captured by Bulba's henchmen, Hammerhead, Hoof and Mouth. Next, Bulba has Tantalus pick Gosalyn up and fly high in the sky and almost drop her. Darkwing, upon seeing no other option left, gives the code away to Bulba. With the Ramrod operating, the ruthless Bulba decides to test it on the Federal Gold Depository. With Clovis stating to Bulba that the gold is secured, Bulba further decides to strip the whole city of St. Canard clean and then hit every other city in the country. As Darkwing asks Bulba to release Gosalyn, Bulba signs Tantalus to drop her. Thank God for Launchpad, who ends up saving little Gosalyn via his Thundercrack. What follows next is Darkwing overloading the Ramrod by casually pressing in the control buttons and causing an explosion on top of the roof of the Canard Tower. Upon witnessing the explosion from a distance, Gosalyn believes that Darkwing is no more and is returned back to the orphanage. A disheartened Gosalyn eventually hears a familiar voice, one that addresses himself as Drake Mallard. Upon seeing the bandaged and bruised Drake Mallard, Gosalyn is delighted, and even more so when the former states to her that he has come to adopt her. The second episode ends with Launchpad appearing as his help, or in other words, his faithful sidekick.
Sorry, but it's time to prune your wedding plans.
Beauty and the Beat. Darkwing Duck is seen recalling a particular story from his secret Darkwing files. It all started at the St. Canard University in the Scientific Research Lab 356 on a normal spring day. We are introduced to Dr. Reginald Bushroot, a man with a passion for plants, fellow scientist Dr. Rhonda Dendron, Dr. Larson and Dr. Gray. With Larson and Gray making fun of Dr. Bushroot for playing with plants, the latter states to them that the day his research becomes successful, people will be able to get nutrition just the way plants do, which is the process by photosynthesis. His colleagues, especially Gary and Larson, however, firmly believe that there is no money involved in nutrition and that people nowadays are only bothered about quantity and not quality. They further state to him that bigger food means bigger profits, and bigger profits mean more money. The duo's research revolves around growing gigantic vegetables, a potato for instance. This is when Dean Tightbill comes to their lab and tells the group about cutting back some expenses and dismisses Dr. Bushroot's research, Dr. Rhododendron is seen trying to cheer up Dr. Bushroot, telling him that with his experience, he can get anywhere he wants. But with the duo of Gary and Larson continuously mocking him, Bushroot is seen leaving the university. It is at this moment that the audience is taken back to Darkwing Duck reading out the story to us in the beginning of the episode. He continues on with his story, the setting of which has certainly changed. While it was spring earlier, now it is dark and a stormy night. We get a glance at Dr. Bushroot inside a greenhouse, blabbering to himself about how this is the only chance that he has, and starts strapping himself to a medical bed. He is quite determined that his theory will work, and then the Dean will be left with no option but to fund his project. We find a flower inside a pot next to him, and he begins experimenting while stating, "Here's to a better tomorrow." In the beginning, the experiment is assumed to be unsuccessful, and Bushroot is seen calling himself a worthless fungal parasite and mourning over the loss of the flower. However, as soon as he steps out into the sunlight, he feels all charged up and realizes that his experiment has worked. As he starts going towards the university to let everyone know about his successful experiment, he begins to notice that he is turning green in color. He shrugs it off, calling it a side effect, and reaches the lab, but by then he is already transformed into a half plant. Gary and Larson continue making fun of him even more, and Bushroot finally realizes that he has turned into a mutant himself. All he ever wanted was to make the world a better place to live, and now he is a walking salad bar. Bushroot soon realizes that he has built some kind of telepathic link with plants and can make the latter use to his advantage. Calling his experiment a scientific breakthrough, he starts addressing himself as the Dr. Dolittle of the plant world. Back at the lab, Larson and Grey are devoured by creeping vines, and that's when Darkwing Duck is seen making his entry into this new crime case. Darkwing is seen speaking with Dr. Rhododendron and coming to a conclusion that the whole thing is nothing but a case of revenge. The duo next visit Dean Tightbill and reinforce his office, but Bushroot sends in a tree to crush through the building and bring Tightbill to him. A fight ensues between Darkwing Duck and Bushroot, along with his trees. Launchpad, on the other hand, gets entangled in vines, and with Darkwing coming to assist him, he gets intertwined too in the process. A tree is seen attacking them, but Darkwing breaks free, resorting to his buzzsaw cufflinks. They are seen chasing Bushroot, who eventually vanishes behind a wall of hedges. Darkwing comes back to the lab and fills in Dr. Rhododendron, who refuses to believe that Bushroot has gone rogue. She further states to the duo that if only there was some way that she could talk to Bushroot, she would be able to persuade him to turn over a new leaf. It's also around the same time that Bushroot is seen eavesdropping on their conversation and judging Rhoda by her words. He thinks she is in love with him, more so because he heard her using his first name, Reginald. Darkwing, while continuing his story about Bushroot, is seen stating to the audience that he just did not realize that the whole Bushroot scene was getting intense. After all, what's more dangerous than a deranged mutant duck is a deranged mutant duck who is in love. Anyway, on with the story, and we find Bushroot back in the greenhouse. He is gearing himself up for his big date with Rhoda, after which he kidnaps her from the lab right in front of Darkwing and Launchpad. Bushroot even leaves behind Spike, a humongous Venus flytrap, to take care of the duo, but with Darkwing throwing a bone at Spike and treating the plant like a dog, he is able to get away from there along with Launchpad. Bushroot is found back in his greenhouse, having strapped Rhoda into a medical bed and ready to transform her like him and make her his wife. Even with Rhoda telling him that she cannot marry him, that she is a working girl, that her career means too much to her, and that things will never work out because she is a duck and he is a plant. Bushroot misunderstands the whole thing and states to her that everything will work out in their favour. He is just about to begin the experiment when Darkwing and Launchpad crash inside the greenhouse and demand him to release Rhoda. After a bit of a struggle between Darkwing and Bushroot, the latter is seen getting run over by a lawn tractor. That's how Darkwing saves the day and Rhoda. The third episode ends with Bushroot growing back in the greenhouse and stating that he has finally found a place in the sun.
Let it slip where a certain masked Avenger hangs out.
You wouldn't.
Hey, I'm a kid. I'm supposed to be irresponsible.
Main characters of the cartoon series. Darkwing Duck. Meet Drake Manhard, who is seen pulling double duty as a single father by day and a caped crime fighter by night, protecting the very citizens of St. Canard.
Okay. So, do you want my phone number?
Launchpad McQuack. Say hello to Darkwing's faithful sidekick, ace pilot Launchpad McQuack, who idolizes Darkwing Duck and addresses him as DW. Unlike his goofball version in DuckTales, where he is constantly seen crashing vehicles, here he is seen joining Darkwing in his heroic adventures and acting as a balance against the bizarre heights that Darkwing's ego often takes him to. Launchpad is also the one to help Darkwing get out of jams, courtesy his quick thinking and heroic reflexes.
Well, here's a message for him.
Gosling Mallard. This one happens to be Drake Mallard's 9-year-old adopted daughter, whose grandfather, Waddlemeyer, was a renowned scientist murdered by the notorious criminal mastermind Taurus Bulba's henchman. Gosling is an unstoppable force of energy and spunk, and is often seen assisting Darkwing as a crime fighter.
Oops. Sorry.
Honker Muddlefoot. He happens to be the best friend of Gosling and the next door neighbour of the Mallards.
You wanted a double scoop? Coming right up!
Tank Muddlefoot. He is the elder brother of Honker and a complete bully, if we may add, having made the life of his younger brother miserable.
It's a stretch, but we figured it was a good career move.
Herb Muddlefoot, father of Honker and Tank. Herb happens to be the irritating next door neighbour of the Mallards. He is a salesman by profession and is seen selling Quackware, the Darkwing version of Tupperware, for a living.
And I'm a high-powered, money-grubbing land developer with absolutely no redeeming values whatsoever.
Binky Muddlefoot. No points for guessing who Binky is given the surname. Otherwise, a pretty-looking chicken housewife who can be both overbearing as well as ditzy. Negaduck. What if Darkwing was evil and from an alternate reality called Negaverse? Well, that would be Negaduck, and it is only fair to address him as Darkwing's worst villain. He looks ditto like Darkwing otherwise, just that his costume is different in colour. While it is true that Negaduck has no special powers, he is surely capable of disguising himself as Darkwing and making him look like a criminal. Unlike Darkwing, Negaduck is absolutely ruthless, and he will not think twice before hurting people to get what he wants in the first place, which would be supremacy and wealth. Oh, he is also the leader of the Fearsome Five, a group consisting of Bushroot, Quackerjack, the Liquidator, and Megavolt.
At last, I get to pull the plug on Darkwing! Oops.
Megavolt. This one here happens to be an ex-high school friend of Drake Mallard, who eventually got blessed with the power to control the medium of electricity after a bully ended up vandalizing his science equipment. It is his control over electricity which he uses as his primary weapon. He's got quite a sartorial sense. We are stressing on his jumpsuit, headpiece, gloves, boots, and let's not forget his safety goggles and that giant battery on his back. It is only fair to address Megavolt as one of the most popular and recurring villains on the show.
Before you mercilessly threw me into that contaminated vat of water.
The Liquidator. What we are looking at is a water-based monstrosity who wasn't always like this. He was a slimy salesman who was initially into the bottled water business. He mutated into his present state after falling into a vat of his competitor's water that was later disclosed to be laced with a corrosive chemical. Because the Liquidator is made of water, he does not gel with the Megavolt for obvious reasons, but he happens to be quite friendly with Bushroot. Quackerjack. Do not confuse this one here with Harley Quinn, given that Quackerjack is seen donning the same costume. Once a toy maker, but now gone rogue. He is seen resorting to his armory of hazardous play things, all as weapons, while plundering banks or, let's say, creating chaos just for the fun of it. Mind you, you can never find him without Mr. Banana Brain, his signature doll that can actually be used as an explosive.
Hi, Princess. Contact!
Steelbeak, the A-class agent of fiendish organisation for world legacy also known as FOUL. Steelbeak has such a peculiar name thanks to his metal beak that he loves donning instead of his regular one. Apparently, his original beak was lost and no one knows how. No points for guessing that it's his beak that serves as his primary weapon, as it can smash through literally anything and everything.
How do you do? I am Steven Spectacle, the great director. My card.
Toscanini. Meet Toscanini, who is driven by his ego and happens to be an unsuccessful Hollywood filmmaker. Yes, the Tusk in his name refers to the fact that he is a walrus. Anyway, coming back to his devious plans, they are all built around movies, and he is usually seen travelling with a group of silent yet quite efficient penguins as sidekicks.
Time to bug out, come on!
Lilliput. Don't judge this one by his name. He is capable of controlling ants, and thanks to the inventor's ray gun, he can also shrink as well as grow things.
Did I say skulls? I meant anvil!
Interesting facts about Darkwing Duck cartoon. We know what you're thinking. It's true that Darkwing Duck does have characters like Launchpad McQuack from the series DuckTales, and also Scrooge McDuck's name has been visibly heard in one of the episodes. But please know that the two series happen to exist in separate universes. This is actually a confirmation from the creator Tad Stones. But if you ask us, we'd like to call this thing a multiverse of quackness. And guess what? It actually does exist. Next is the fact that the show is a direct spoof of various comics and pulp fiction tropes, and there's no denying that. But did you know that the character Darkwing's alter identity, Drake Mallard, happens to be a definite spoof of Kent Allard? Yes, that's the secret identity of the Shadow. What follows next is an even more interesting fact. Please tell us that you agree with us when we tell you that Darkwing Duck actually goes full commando. Wow, he does not really wear pants. Take a closer look at his superhero costume. There's no pants there. And if you think it's just Darkwing, take a glance at Drake Mallard, and even Goslin for that matter. None of them wear pants. Also, the character of Goslin was to an extent based on creator Tad Stone's 2-year-old daughter. Stones believed that's how his daughter would be when she would grow up. Last but not least, the character of Megavolt's initial name was supposed to be Dimble. We are pretty sure that you did not see this coming. Darkwing Duck reboot is coming your way. It is true that a reboot of the series is in development for Disney+. The American subscription VOD OTT streaming service did leave us a few hints here and there about the planned spin-off, one that particularly revolves around Darkwing Duck. It's yet to receive a premiere date, and fans of the series can barely control their excitement anymore. Well, with this, we have finally come to the end of our video here. Do hit us with your thoughts in the comment section and let us know what it is that you absolutely love about the animated series Darkwing Duck. Also, stay tuned with us for more interesting content. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.
I am the onion that stings in your eyes. I am Darkwing